Radiant and Resilient is about mindset and faith to break paradigms and overcome challenges in our life. Because when the mind, body, and spirit are aligned, we literally radiate from the inside out. I'm Kay Vasquez. Let's dive in. Well, welcome to Radiant and Resilient. I'm just so excited to have you here, Jess. You've just been an inspiration to me. I've learned about you through my friend Laura De Cesaris in the Powerhouse Women community. And when I was following you, I was just like, I love her energy. And then you shared something the other day about being a projector. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're a projector? I'm like, I'm a projector too. I'm like, no wonder I like you. But I love your story. And you've just been on such an incredible journey. And yeah, I'd love to dive into a little bit about different things in your journey, especially overcoming specific challenges. But before we do, just, quickly share with the listeners like a little bit about who you are, and then share a specific moment in your entrepreneurial journey where mindset played a role in overcoming a specific challenge.
Well, we're joined by today's second guest, which is my cat Freckles. He's going to just hang out with me here too. He brings me a lot of joy. So it's crazy. And I love that you opened up with that because our journeys are wild, right? And a lot of times we forget how far we've come, and we think so far in the future, we forget like the things we've overcome as proof of what's possible for the future. And so even just getting asked this question and slowing down in my own life to participate as a guest in someone else's podcast really helps me, hone in on those moments that I'm like, yeah, I have done some really cool stuff. Thank you for that recognition. And in seeing my journey as something that's somewhat inspiring, aspirational, or like, wow, someone in their 40s can go from having a 20-year career in the beauty industry to now being an online coach and mentor, mastermind host, podcast guest, speaker, author. It's like, are you talking about me? Like I did.
Yeah.
And I hope that I always stay humble enough to, recognize that a lot of that is such a privilege to be able to do, but also took a lot of mindset reframes, a lot of limiting belief, overcoming, certain situations where I thought this isn't possible for me. I'm not educated enough. I'm too old. For many years, it was I'm too young. I don't know enough. And so when I started to follow mentors who were showing me what was possible, I started to believe that it could be possible for me too. And when masterminds came around, I started to get really curious. I figured it was something only business people did. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, you don't even think of yourself as a business person because you've been in an industry that 22 years ago wasn't considered a real business, wasn't looked at as a high profile, lucrative career, which I'm talking about being a hairdresser and a makeup artist. It was almost at the time when I went to beauty school looked at as what people did when they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do. And I won't say that's entirely untrue for me and in my choice in choosing that career. But really, when I look back at my journey, it came from a need to fill that worthiness, that validation, that attention. And I remember as a kid not getting a lot of that from my mom. She had me at 19 years old, so super young. And she was such a hard worker. So I watched what an entrepreneur looked like. My mom is in real estate. She sells mobile homes. She has a huge book of business now. And, she's been really successful, but that came at the cost of missing out on a lot of the things in my childhood. Yeah. So even at 19 years old, I don't think I knew what I was making when I was making this decision, that I was really choosing a career of freedom. And I did that in doing it through entrepreneurship in the beauty industry. And it gave me so much freedom. And now in my career as a online coach and, business strategist for other coaches and other high level entrepreneurs, I realized the thing that got me where I was to the point of success in the beauty industry was my focus, being able to focus, being able to knock out things that were kind of, glass ceilings, if you would, in that industry. 6 figures in my early 20s, creating a sustainable business that I wasn't burnt out from, all of these things, right? That you don't think of as different than anybody else. But as the years went on, I noticed there was a gap in how I showed up and did business versus maybe a stylist next to me who just couldn't seem to stay busy enough, who couldn't seem to keep clients. And so, in early 2019, a mentor of mine, Lori Harder, had been doing these in-person women's events. And for some time, I had been a volunteer. We had met doing fitness camps through Strong Fitness magazine about 10 years prior. And I was kind of in her world, but I didn't really consider myself an entrepreneur like her. And her husband, Chris, finally launched something called Fast Foundations, which was an early stage mastermind for entrepreneurs looking to grow or scale like an online business. And I thought, well, I don't have an online business, but I know if I want to learn from people who have done it, like I have to get into rooms like this. And so that was the very first time that I ever jumped into something without really understanding what the ROI might be or what I might quote unquote get out of it. It was this overwhelming sense of like, if nothing changes, nothing's going to change. And so I did that quick assessment. Like, if nothing changes, are you going to be okay with the way your life is in 5 years? And I was like, it wouldn't be that bad, but it wouldn't probably be that great. And at the time, my son was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And I was just craving more time freedom in my life, seeing these other entrepreneurs be able to work from their phones, work online, which you trade one set of problems for another.
Right.
But that location freedom became my carrot and became my why. And so that's what keeps me in the game even to this day. I'm an in-person person. I crave connection, and that's why people feel so much energy from me when they see me online or when they meet me in person, because that's where I really thrive. And it's crazy because looking back, you can kind of connect the dots versus when you're in it, it's so hard to connect them looking forward. But I just stayed around people who I could see were at least 2, 3, 5, 10 steps ahead of me. And that's what ultimately got me to where I'm at now, which is a podcast host, I'm a coach, mastermind host, all the things. And so, yeah, the journey's not been easy or really clear, but I've gained a lot of confidence and clarity along the way, taking the next wrong step or taking the next right step. It's always given me the answers that I need. And so that simple, like little notion of, taking a few steps brings clarity and confidence, allows me to show up every day and be like, okay, I'm going to learn either way. And I'm not afraid to make decisions one way or the other.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing. Like, you shared so much that I'm like, oh my goodness, so much to speak to, because I can resonate with your journey so much, because I too had this underlying belief of like, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, seeking the validation, because I was became a physician assistant thinking, okay, this is it. And realized it wasn't giving me the freedom as well that I really was truly seeking, and pursuing entrepreneurship to actually finally get that freedom. But it's not an easy journey. Like you said, there's a lot of challenges and trials along the way. And it's so true, like what you're saying, like being able to look back and connect the dots. That's like one of my favorite quotes by Steve Jobs is like, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And then you understand like why everything happened the way it happened to get you to where you are today. And it's so beautiful because I'm sure, yeah, when you were a hairstylist, you probably had like entrepreneurship, starting a podcast. That's probably not even on your mind, but because of just the evolution and where this journey took you, that's what you ended up evolving into. And yeah, your energy is incredible. And I believe your profile, you're a 4-1 profile. Yeah. So that makes sense. As a projector, that 4 profile, you're that people person. You love connecting with other people. And you really are in alignment with that. And I can really see that. And that's another key thing, because, of the conditioning, that's where that I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. So we end up pursuing after things that we think we should do based on the conditioning. But on this journey, you started to shed some of that. So can you share, like, when was that pivotal moment that helped you recognize, like, I wasn't operating in alignment with who I was, and what did that alignment look like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that shift took a little bit longer to recognize, and I'm still in it. I notice it tends to go every once in a while, and I'm currently reading the book 10x is easier than 2x, and it's just effing up my whole world right now. But also giving me so much clarity around why things feel a little out of alignment and a little more stagnant and a little bit harder. Because when we stay in that, let me just get a little bit more, let me just make a little bit more money so I can have a little bit more freedom, or, it's like this constant little rat race that's never enough, and it never gives you the feeling or validation that you're really truly seeking. And so when you read books like this that remind you that the bigger goals are easier to accomplish because you'll probably maybe fall short, But because you're shooting for something so high, you're going to have way more, way more experience along the journey, but the outcome's going to be far better than you could ever expect.
Yes.
And so it's interesting because this year is the first time I'm running this mastermind, and I went to launch it end of last year, and it just didn't feel aligned yet. I wasn't clear enough on who it was specifically for. And it was really because I wasn't clear on who I still was in this journey, because I had worked for Chris harder after I was inside the mastermind back in 2019 as one of the support coaches. And so I learned how to hold that space in a way that felt good for me, like I had received from him. And I honed in on what worked, what didn't work, what I saw as far as a gap, and where I could kind of fill that. But when you mentor or mirror after someone else's success, it's difficult to ever feel like you're going to do it good enough.
Yes.
And so I had to get over that fact that I'm never going to be as quote unquote good as him if I don't start. And that what I currently knew was more than enough to put out something really juicy and good for other people that would help move the needle. And so when I simplified the transformation or the outcome for myself, it was easier to create sales copy. It was easier to create aligned messaging when I showed up on social media to talk about what I was going to do versus talk about what I thought people wanted to hear from me. And that mindset shift and that kind of like alignment comes from doing things out of alignment first, where you're like, this feels really hard. I don't want to be on social media. No one's answering my messages when I do story polls. No one's downloading my podcast. It's like, well, are you truly expressing your own point of views and thoughts? Are you sharing from an experienced place, or are you trying to replicate what someone else is doing? And it's really difficult to differentiate that when you're so inundated with information, with all the books we can read, with all the podcasts we can listen to, with all of the information. It's like, are these my own thoughts, or am I just regurgitating stuff? You know? And in some form or fashion, we are reteaching whatever we've learned in a way that makes more sense for someone else in order to help streamline their, process of going from point A to point Z. That's the goal with coaching. That's the goal with, I think even therapy is helping people go from a place of feeling stuck and frustrated to a place of aligned, true action. And for me, knowing that I could help people go from confused and unclear to aligned, focused, in their own authentic power was like, that's enough for me to get out of my own way, stop making it about me, and figure out how I could help other people. And so, that gave me the confidence and belief to launch it again, have a lot of success, and just really have the greatest group of women in the program right now that is helping me see an even bigger vision for it next year. And so I think the journey is just in the doing, and the alignment comes with that. And it's like raising children. If you have kids and you listen to the show, you start to get a groove with your kid, and then all of a sudden they hit a different milestone. And when they used to sleep, now they don't sleep anymore. And then they used to want to eat this, and now they don't anymore. Business is the same way. Life is the same way. Things are trending for a while, and then they're not. Everybody wants to see reels one way, and then they don't. We're like, oh, the algorithm hates me. Your kid doesn't hate you. Your kid's growing and evolving like life is. And so we have to be able to ebb and flow and not get so stuck and rigid in how we do things and how we show up, and look at the things that we have available, like social media, like any of the other platforms that are available, as an asset to how we can show up and be creative. And I think everybody has a creative, streak in them. It's just a matter of if you have enough time and space to allow that creativity to come out. I read recently that you have to pencil in time to create enough boredom that your creative mind can start to take over and think, like how you used to get really bored in class and you would just kind of stare off into the ceiling and you would get daydream. When's the last time you caught yourself in a daydream? Normally we catch ourselves in a like, oh my God, this is going to happen. We're playing out scenarios of like bad shit that could happen, or like things we wish we would have said, or we're replaying stuff. I should have sent that email, or I should have done this, or I should be making another, like, it's like all these shoulds versus like, would it be cool if one day I could work from anywhere? What would that look like? What would I have to do? Chris Harder, my mentor, used to call it stupid idea time. I rephrased it. I call it, wouldn't it be cool when, versus wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be cool when I only have to work 3 days a week in my business and my team takes over the rest of it? Wouldn't it be cool when I'm making $500,000 in my business, so I no longer have to worry about the ins and outs of, making financial decisions. So I challenge anybody, if you're feeling like kind of stuck with either your mindset or the alignment piece, play. Wouldn't it be cool when? And then look at those goals, look at those dreams that you have on a piece of paper and think, how can I make this happen? And who do I need to help me get there? And those pieces, it's not that how am I going to do this?
Right.
Who can help me get there? Right? And what are my goals? So I think those are things we don't even allow ourselves to think, because like you said earlier, we're stuck in this proving of what does everybody want from me? Who am I still trying to impress or get validation from? Those questions will allow for you to think for yourself. And so when we can do that, then we're able to create content. We're able to create podcasts. We're able to write copy that lands with people because it's truly what you're thinking and feeling. So that alignment piece is really huge.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, so much gold, that one little segment. And it's true. And I love how you said you had to do things out of alignment first to recognize what doesn't feel good, what's not working for you. Yeah. And I can see that in my journey too, like going after doing all these things because, okay, if that person did that to become successful, let me try that. And then I realized, oh, that didn't really feel so good. And I've learned that for me, it's like, okay, I can take what someone did and just tweak it and make my own. Yeah. And do it in a way that feels good, that allows more ease and more flow and allows that creativity. But it's so true, because it's like a lot of times we just want to do it right the first time, do it in a way that, but it's like, no, how would you know whether something's right or not if you have to do it a specific way first, and then you're going to find out whether that felt good or not, or if you need to tweak or shift or pivot, And so I really love that, because it's such an important distinction, especially as an entrepreneur, going in, especially getting caught up in the perfectionism pattern and trying to be good enough, but also recognizing, being okay that just because one person's, path to success look like this doesn't necessarily mean your path is going to look that way. And I have to remind myself of that.
I have to remind myself of that all the time, because like most of us, we get FOMO. It's like this instant, like, oh my gosh, that looks so cool. Or, oh my gosh, she looks so happy.
Right.
And this happened to me in the industry because so many of my friends went on to become like, stage presenters. They went on to have massive education programs. They're all over Instagram. They're, 100,000, 200,000 followers because they have courses or programs. And when I watch that, I think validation, validation, validation. And being a hairdresser is very validating. Being a makeup artist is very validating. A client comes in and they're happy to see you. They're happy when they leave. They're paying you. Generally, they're rebooking their appointments and they can't wait to get back in your chair. It's a very positive, for the most part, experience all around. The transaction is very clear. You are coming to get your hair done. You are leaving with your hair done. Right. I understood the assignment. In the coaching world, or in the speaking world, or even in a book, someone's going to take what you're saying differently than the person sitting there. Yeah. Right? It's like someone who comes in and says, I want red hair. Well, do you want purple red or do you want orange red? If we don't get clear on what people need or want, which is ultimately the problem most people have, is they don't know exactly what it is they want. And I had a friend for the longest time that, when I was in a season of trying to decide what felt in alignment and what didn't, was letting my salon business go, selling the salon and moving full on into an unknown world, she would sit with me, hold space, listen, and then ask the most annoying question. Well, what do you want? Yeah. And I would literally want to punch her in the throat and be like, bitch, it's not that easy. I can't answer that question. And she goes, until you can answer that question at some level, you're never going to have the ability to make a decision. Now, since you and I are projectors, we could geek out a little bit. If you guys don't know what a projector is, it's one of the types, designs with human design. I realize as a projector, we're never meant to feel 100% sure about any decision. We're only meant to feel about 75 to 80% sure. And so when I acquired that knowingness, I was like, well, my body feels like I'm 80% sure. Yeah. My mind is thinking, I don't know how this is going to work. But going back to what I said earlier, who do I need to be around in order to borrow some belief from that I can do this? Okay, cool. I'm going to get around them at any cost, and I'm going to stay around them. I'm going to read books from those people. I'm going to listen to them speak. I'm going to get in those rooms, even if it's hard, uncomfortable, financially a stretch, whatever that looks like, because I know right now what I'm doing is not working. That's all I do know for sure. And I don't know why it's not working sometimes. Right. And I want you to, anyone listening, to release the why. You don't need to understand why something doesn't feel right in your body anymore. or why a person doesn't feel good in your energy anymore. You don't have to label them or put emphasis on this. Well, it's kind of not good or it's kind of not bad. We're in a season in the world now that anything is possible. So if it's not a hell yes, it should be a no. If it's not a full body yes, it should be a no until it is more of a full body yes, or at least some sort of a yes versus I don't know. I don't know to me is always a no,
Yes.
And I think, going back to what you were saying, knowing that we have the power to choose things can sometimes be the most overwhelming thing.
Yeah.
When we watch people make these massive shifts and transformations and do things, we're like, oh, I should be doing that too. So back to like watching people in my industry have these massive educational careers, I had to go back to what was that why and carrot that I shared earlier.
Yeah.
It was to have location freedom and to have my own schedule, the freedom of my own schedule. Now, I could create my own schedule for travel for that, but that would take me away from my kid, which is the one thing I wanted to be more, a parent here for, and a variety of other things. So I was like, great, that looks cool, but it's not actually what's going to serve me or make me happy. Yes. So I got to let the what looks cool go and focus on what is the thing that's actually going to bring me the peace and freedom that I'm truly desiring. So when it is in that, wouldn't it be cool if every day I woke up and I felt peace and freedom? Not, wouldn't it be cool if I had 10,000 likes on this photo and my post went viral? That would be cool too. But what's more important? What's actually going to make me feel safe in my body, to keep creating, to keep showing up, to be a good mom, all of those things. And so ultimately, when you figure out why you're doing something, it helps give so much clarity. And then comes the confidence. And that's like the whole thing I teach. So yeah, I honestly, I think that's people's biggest mistake is they look to see what looks cool and what it looks like for other people to be happy and then try to replicate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all guilty of it. So I'm not calling anybody out. If you're listening, don't feel like she's calling. If you feel like I'm calling you out, then maybe we should have a chit chat because we've both been there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've been there. And just, around like what it is that I want to achieve. And I think getting clear on our why is so powerful because when I first started as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I wanted freedom to travel, to spend time with my husband, to create my own schedule, work a couple of days a week. I wanted that. And I found myself not doing that. It was like, I'm working like every day, even on the weekend. And I felt like I had less freedom than when I had a job. And because of the challenges that I faced as an entrepreneur, I finally got to a point, it's like, okay, what am I really seeking? And that was, I just really wanted to feel free. I wanted peace within me. And I'm like, well, if I'm seeking to make X amount of income, to have X amount of followers, X amount of clients, would I still feel peace? Would I still feel free when I achieve that? And I realized I probably wouldn't, because then once I achieve it, then I'm on to the next thing. Okay, hit that goal, on to the next one, hit that goal, on to the next one. And so I realized like, okay, what can I do to start experiencing that peace, that freedom now? And having that clarity of just, what is the ultimate goal? What is the, thing that you want to achieve is going to be so important to keep you going, especially in those moments. We just focus on, the followers and income. And we don't achieve that in a certain time frame. It can leave us powerless and defeated. And it definitely did for me. But another piece I also want to speak to, because you've talked about this too, is just like a definition of success. So, what paradigms or norms did you break through in order to achieve success and like really define what success looked like for you?
It's interesting because I think, as a parent, it shifts what it feels like to feel successful. Like you take them in micro wins, you got through a day, your kid took a nap. They're like, you start to really appreciate the smaller wins that feel like success. And so when that kind of clicked for me, I was able to apply that for my business and find the success in the moments versus success as an overall end all goal. And then say, hey, I checked that off. That was successful. Now on to the next thing. I can see that anything that I put my full focus on becomes successful in some form or fashion. So the level of which you're comparing success to is all dependent on what your, own ideal version of success is. But if your success levels look like being consistent, I said I was going to work out 3 times this week and I did it. I feel like that's a success. It's why I created, if I may speak so frankly, Fuck Yeah Fridays, because we don't take the time to celebrate our
Mm.
wins as often
Yeah.
as we should, especially as women. And so I started a whole text community where I text you every Friday reminding you to celebrate your wins, big or
Mm.
small. Because if every week you can just look back and find one or two wins, small or even big ones, and recognize that, sit in that gratitude for what you had to do to accomplish that, it just carries on to the next week of like, yeah, I did that last week. I can do it again, right? Or I can do it even better, or I can,
Mm.
add to that. It's like the habit stacking that we do. But
Yes.
when you notice that you're not feeling like you're getting the wins and you're still deeply craving that, you have to decide, who do you need to become in order to be the version of yourself who can show up and do those things? Because we all know that consistency is what builds momentum and creates that success. It's rare that we feel a sense of pride when something's like a one-off. Oh, I got lucky, and we'll just use a silly thing like a post went viral. Oh, success. Well, what
Mm.
did that equate to? Did that mean you have more clients, dollars in your pocket? That may have been the successful post, but to embody and truly feel successful,
Mm.
I think is almost something you need to start with and then build upon that, because the success framework is, again, so different for everybody. And for me, ultimately, I feel like consistency has become a superpower that brings me a lot of fulfillment that looks like success.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, especially as projectors, our signature is success. So that was something I had to really like redefine within myself. And I love that. It's just like looking at the little moments that add up to bigger wins in the future. But if we can really just celebrate those little wins and see the success in those moments, it's so powerful. So I love that, because we all have, like you said, our version of success, but is it in alignment with our ultimate goal, feeling that peace, feeling that fulfillment?
Yeah. And I'll
So,
offer one extra piece to that,
yeah.
because I think a lot of people are in the season like I am, and maybe you are too, where we have really high level mentors who
Yeah.
are rapidly growing and having a lot of what looks like success financially. Their network is growing. And if you compare where you're at to where they are in their journey, even if they're only a year ahead of you, 5 years, my mentors are about 10 years ahead of me as far as
Mm.
what they've done. I'll never feel like I'm successful enough, because I'm
Right.
comparing myself to Lori Harder, who has 65 million downloads on her podcast.
Yeah.
Well, she has over 1,000 episodes out. I'm only at 280
Mm.
episodes. So the fact that I have 75,000 downloads is good.
Mm.
To
That's
me, it's
amazing. Yeah.
successful. I haven't quit. I still show up every
Yes.
week. To me, and I'm never going to get to 65 million if I don't hit that 75,000, right? If I don't hit 7 downloads, you're never going to get to that. And that's
Right.
where a lot of us want to give
Mm.
up, because we feel like we're so far behind
Yeah.
that what's the point?
Right.
And that is one thing I hope I can gift anybody listening, is you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And the second that you can
Mm.
actually believe that, or even believe it just a tiny bit, you will feel such a sense of pride and accomplishment, fulfillment, success, peace, that you are doing the best you can in the season
Mm.
that you're in. And I coach a lot of women who have kids, myself included, and we're looking at these
Mhm.
other women who don't have kids, who maybe have a support system with a spouse who provides an income as well. So
Right.
your means to doing something are going to look so different than what they're able to do. And so when you
Absolutely.
really follow people who are very similar to you, if you either are going to compare what maybe worked for them versus someone who isn't having those same challenges as you, who has an umpteenth amount of hours to work a day, at least compare yourself to the right people if you're going to do it, and use them as proof of what's possible. And if by any chance you can work with them or get around them, I also encourage that. So that's just, I hope, a gift that someone can be like, okay, she's right. Like, I am doing the best that I can. I could probably turn it up a little bit, but the reality is I only have 2 hours a week to work on this side business or to build this side
Right.
dream that I really want. And I'm doing that. So that is a win for me, because the more we can pour into ourselves and kind of give
Yes.
ourselves that credit, it keeps the energy high. And so for me, when I
Mm-hmm.
feel like my energy's dropping and I'm getting into that funky, like, ugh, everything's hard, I'm
Yep.
like, what are you comparing yourself to?
Mm. Yeah.
Why do you feel like that? Why don't you just take a break? Like, who are
Right.
you competing against? Why are you being so
Exactly.
competitive with yourself? Like, if you don't have an episode to drop this week, okay, don't drop one. Like, no one's going to be upset. And if they are, great. You'll know your fans want more of you. That's just,
Exactly.
how I try to look at things now, and it's taken off the pressure, but I'm human too. I still get in those little
Oh
funks where
yeah.
I'm like,
We are all
eh,
human.
We're all human. And then you have a great conversation with your new friend and everything feels good again.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. And that's really it. You know, give ourselves grace in every moment. We're human. We are doing the best that we can with what we know. And as we keep showing up, keep doing the things, we that's how we learn. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we step into the next version of ourselves. So
Yeah.
awesome. I love that so much. Jess, goodness, there's just so many takeaways. And I'm like, there's so many things that I want to dive in with you. But yeah, I know it's like we only have a short period of time, so we have to come back and do it, part two of this to be continued. But yeah, just so many gold nuggets and insights to take away from our conversation today. And you know, to wrap it up, like what's a personal mantra or affirmation that's really guided you through all those challenges?
Mm. It's kind of annoying. And I keep it, on my desk, and it's a little quote by Marie Forleo that everything
Oh,
is figure outable.
yes.
It's simple and it's easy, and I can remember it when people ask me this question. And ultimately, if I just stop with the overwhelm and think like, okay, maybe I can't figure this out, but I bet somebody else can. Who can I pay to help me figure this out?
Mm.
And there is a plethora of free information on social media, people that you can
Yes.
hire. And so I have just empowered myself to ask for help.
Mm.
And when I feel stuck, I raise my hand. I raise
I
my
love that.
hand. I post it on social. Who can help me with this? Does anybody know somebody who can help with this? And it can be from the simplest things with my kid to business stuff to life stuff. And that ability to believe that anything's figure outable and that you can ask for help are two of the
Yes.
greatest flexes you can ever make in life. The biggest assets you'll ever have is the belief and then the
Yes.
ability to say, hey, I need help. And
Mm.
sometimes we don't even really know what we need help with. We
Right.
just need to know that we have people we can reach out to. So
Yes.
that's why staying engaged on social media, I think, is such a big way we can do that. A lot of people look at it like it's not worth their time, but ultimately we have people who are watching us and
I do.
are looking to us for inspiration and aspiration who may never even engage with you. And you are probably doing that to somebody else. And so if there's someone you could ask advice or help from, like, do it, do it, do it, do it.
I love Marie Forleo. I read her book, Everything's Figure Outable, and it's so true. It really, really is. And it starts with just, you know, if you're feeling stuck, ask for help because you never
Mhm.
know what insight they may provide that is like the next key to your breakthrough and then key to your next step. So I love that so much. Well, thank you again, Jess. This was awesome, incredible. Like I always say this, when two projectors get together, you can just really dive deep into so much. And again, there's just not enough time, but I think, yeah, for the time that we had together, you just provided so much gold. So share with the listeners, if they want to learn more about you, follow you, you know, where can they find you?
Well, I practice what I preach. I show up on social media pretty much daily. So you can find me on there sharing my life and stories and a lot of hopefully good takeaways that I get from other guests on my show as well. I do have the
Yes.
podcast called Unscripted, where we
I
put
love
two
it.
episodes out a week. We have a guest episode Tuesdays and Fridays a solo. It's the Fuck Yeah Friday episodes where I'm there to remind you of a win and how you can push through things. So those are kind of my communities where we hang out. And if you want any more from me, just reach out, send me a DM. If you had any aha moments or a takeaway or something you related to in this episode, let me know. And as a projector and a fellow podcast host, the biggest blessing, the biggest gift you can ever give a creative entrepreneur like Kate also is to leave a rating and review
Yes.
for her podcast or share this with somebody, even on your social media. It takes you 2 seconds. 1 minute of your time to leave a rating and review and or share this with somebody. If you have an email list, that's an even bigger flex you can do because I promise you the more you pay it forward, the
Yes.
more that will come back to you in your world, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. It costs you nothing to support your friends and people that you know or even don't know. So that's my also like toot toot for you because I know it takes a lot of work and
Thank you.
forethought to create like this. And so
Yeah.
any support we can get is always appreciated.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. So yeah, go support her, go follow her, uh, check out her podcast, leave a review, subscribe, share, do all the things. And thank you again, Jess, for your time. This was such an amazing, incredible conversation.
So good. Thanks, Kate.